Right, good evening ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Cabinet. Can I first begin, as always in these situations, by reciting to you the fire evacuation procedures for the evening. There are no fire alarms scheduled for this evening. Therefore, if the fire alarms sound, please evacuate the building immediately. The fire exits are located at the rear and side of this room. Go down the stairs and meet in War Memorial Park. And since we actually have this evening the Chief Constable in the room just down there, accompanied by the Divisional Commander, I think we're probably in the safest place in the borough this evening, if nothing else. Remind us all, if we're needed, reminding that this meeting is being webcast, and say good evening to webcast viewers, if there are any. Apologies for absence. We have an apology from Councillor Donnell, who is unfortunately tied up on business and unable to get back from foreign parts for this meeting. And our provisional apology from Councillor Raffel, who is somewhere between here and Bournemouth. And I guess his case may have run over a bit to prevent him from getting back in time, but he should be joining us later on. The minutes of the previous meeting of the 18th of March it was. Can I take that those minutes are okay? And if so, any comments to make? If not, I will sign them at the end of the meeting. Juno, if that's all right with you. We have no urgent items, no referrals from full council, no reference reports or from other committees or petitions. So we move to the core of the agenda. Now, as we have one speaker this evening who is in two parts, if you understand what I mean, he's speaking on two items. I'm proposing to take those first. And so I'll take them in the logic of the paper orders, so we'll start with item 13, which is the Northwessex Down AONB Management Plan, which is paper C for all of you in your set of papers, which begins on page 57 of 156. And ask Councillor Watts if you'd like to come forward. This happens on a fairly regular basis, that the management plan for the AONB comes to us as being a key partner within the AONB. This would normally have been introduced by a variety of by Councillor Donnell, but I'll cover it here. He would like to compliment the officers on the work that's been done on this. The paper outlines the management of the plan for the AONB for the next period, and recommends that it should be supported. Good evening, Councillor Raffel.
Good evening, also on next.
That's okay. And so, Councillor Watts, you have some comments you would like to make on this paper.
Yes, thank you, Linda. As I was coming anyway, I thought I'd give you the benefit of my opinions on this, which I may be repeating at the Development Control Committee next week.
Always appreciated.
I'm an enthusiast for areas of outstanding natural beauty, particularly keen on the ridge in this borough from Beacon Hill to Cullington Hill, and they must be preserved. However, the North Wessex Downs Management Plan doesn't take account of changes that have occurred since its boundaries were defined. The document does have a section on urban fringe and its setting, which provides for, quote, detailed measures to mitigate harm on and into the area. Experience in Whitchurch, particularly with regard to planning application, to be heard next week, is that the AONB officers are inflexible in their comments. The land south of Blosswood Lane, technically in the AONB, but separated from it by the A34 Whitchurch bypass, is not beautiful. The AONB has objected to housing there without suggesting any mitigation. And this is not surprising because none is needed. And I'd like to suggest that Basingstoke and Dean Borough Council should be robust in its dealings with the area of outstanding natural beauty, following the management plan's requirements for, quote, good design and siting of all new developments and reflecting the local landscape character and architecture, but not accepting a veto on necessary growth of settlements on the edge of the AONB.
Thank you. I think the point that I will make is that, of course, the AONB are not a planning authority, unlike, for instance, the national parks, which are, and therefore they are only at any time a contributor to comment on any particular planning issue. And each planning issue should be considered on its own merits. And whilst I think it is up to the AONB to form its own view on how it wants to approach those matters, I'm sure that the planning authority and the planning committee will use its common sense, which it is required to do, and will certainly take a robust view to ensure that any decision that's made is in conformity with the agreed policies.
Thank you.
Thank you. In that case, if there's no other points, did you wish to make any points, Councillor Raffels? This is a planning issue?
No, I didn't. Thank you.
Right. In that case, I think we can just nod this way. Don't go away, because you'll be on again in a second. So don't want to keep you walking backwards and forwards. Should we agree this? To go forward. Good. Then let us go back to. It's actually a pair of items on your agenda. It is paper E, which is referred to both under 11.2 and also item 15, a key decision on forward plan, parks and open spaces, a motion which came from council originally. And this, I think, seeks to set out a policy by which we deal with our green spaces within the borough going forward. I think it originally arose from a concern that some people had that all of our green space was under threat from being developed. Whilst I don't think that was ever likely to be the case, I think all of us also share a common wish to see as much green space maintained within the borough as is possible. And we have tried in bringing forward this proposal, or the response to this proposal, to lay out a plan for enabling that to happen in a practical and sensible way going forward. Clearly, we've got two roles to play here. We have one as the planning authority, which would oversee any development by landowners, and then secondly as ourselves as a council, being a landowner the owner of many of these areas of green space. I think the planning issues have already amply been covered in the local plan, which is now out for consultation, and therefore this paper does not, and this decision doesn't include those aspects of it. What this does focus on is our own landowning interests. And the approach that we've taken is to preserve the council's ability to improve local areas and to make provision for new facilities whilst at the same time protecting green spaces. A full council decision on each one of those would be too cumbersome a process, and therefore what this paper lays out is a clear categorisation of those areas of special importance, large areas like Royal Memorial Park, as well as LNRs, sinks, etc., which are owned by the council that can only be changed by a vote of full council, and those which will otherwise be dealt with under this categorisation process. I think if you return to Appendix 1 at the back of paper E, which is on page 129 of 156, you will find the criteria laid out there. This has been the subject of a tremendous amount of debate and discussion at various committees. It's never going to be a perfect list, I think. No doubt we shall, in the fullness of time, once we see how it works, wish to review this, come back to it, I should imagine, in the light of experience. But nevertheless, that's where we have arrived at as a result of the various debates that have taken place so far. So that's the extent of the paper, it's the purpose of the paper, and it's the way that the paper seeks to control this particular area of activity. Councillor Watts, you wish to make some points, please.
Yes, please, as a general point and a specific instance. I welcome the principles behind this report and the motion put to Council, but there's an important criterion that's been overlooked. I posted a proposed amendment on the members' portal as follows, which is quotes to Appendix 1, that is. Add a new paragraph 10. Was the green space conveyed to the Council's ownership under a planning obligation, Section 106, in mitigation of the effect of a new development? If yes, the green space is added to the list of sites to be afforded protection. And renumber existing paragraph 10 and review the assessment in Appendix 2 accordingly. I suggest it would be disgraceful not to protect land that has been transferred to the Council explicitly to serve the needs of new residents for recreation, whether it's active or passive. 5 years ago, Councillor Dunlop and I put a motion through Council for such Section 106 land not to be promoted for development through the SLAR. And I have to say that at the end of that process, the former Councillor Lowen told the residents president he agreed with them entirely. But that only affects the SLAR as it goes up to the end of the current local plan period, which has slipped a bit, I think. Now that site, that saved a site near Caesar's Way in Whitchurch from development. I'm pleased to see that's now the subject of a positive recommendation in Appendix 2. But at the same time, our successful motion also saved sites in Tadley and Kingsclere from development, and I'm surprised not to see them mentioned here. That is Kevin Close in Kingsclere and Guttridge Lane in Tadley. On this occasion, the example in Whitchurch is the Parkview play area, which is said not to meet the criteria. Well, I know you know that area, Leader, because I met you on site there once, and the lady who also met then was hoping to be here this evening, but her husband has to work this evening. So I'm proposing a new criterion, in which case Parkview would be protected, but I don't know which other sites in the borough might be covered by this amendment. On the previous occasion, I was having difficulty getting the information. I put in a freedom of information request and a question to the cabinet member at the same time. And poor Mr. Guy found that he was given the task of answering 3 of my questions. I'd used different wording in all of them. So we compromised that one list would do. And I was amazed at how many were listed, but the only 3 that were in the SLAR were the 3 I previously mentioned. Now, if you don't agree with the amendment this evening, we'll return to the subject at the full council meeting, because I believe you're simply making a recommendation there. But I would hope that it could be resolved now, because it seems to be common sense and a matter of basic responsibility that if we get land for £1 for a purpose, then it should be preserved for that purpose.
Thank you, Councillor. I do indeed have your comments that you made on the webpage log on this. I think that the reason why I would find it difficult to accept this is the reason for the underlying methodology of the underlying approach that's been taken in this, in that throughout this, what we've sought to do is not to have a blanket approach to everything, and to say that there may well be times when some green space should not be protected because actually better use can be made of it, or other things can be done with it, or it actually is a very small piece of green space which we may have acquired as part of Section 106, but actually could be agglomerated in some redevelopment, some regeneration project, which could be better used in other ways. I think the list of criteria which we have already, and if we take the particular case that you just quoted to me, would, as I read it, pretty much be covered within that, under this list of criteria.
Sorry, if I could respond, the resident who was hoping to be here was going to argue that criterion 3 applies to this site anyway. And I think there might be several residents wanting to say that at the full council.
Well, I think there may well be people who wish to argue that particular point, and I think full council can take a view whether they think that is right. I, however, don't think that necessitates necessarily having to have the additional criterion, which basically says that everything which is given by section 106 needs to fall into that category. I do think we need to maintain the flexibility to take a pragmatic approach to dealing with this, whilst very much endorsing the underlying principle that we wish to maintain as much green space as possible, and that the criteria which has been agreed and been through consultation and I think been pretty much unanimously agreed at, with subject to your comments of course, meets most of those needs.
Okay, I'll see you at the full council.
Indeed. Right. Members, has anybody else got any points to make on this? If not, are we happy to recommend this to full council as it stands at the moment? Agreed? Good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Watts. Can we then go back to item 11 on the agenda, and item 11.1, which is the property and alternative investment strategy. Councillor, would you like to introduce this?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, the property. This is a report on the property and proposed property and alternative investment strategy. Our commercial property portfolio is very important contributor to our revenues. 15.6 million. To put it in context, something like 2.5 times what we generate in rates. And that's important in terms of our ability to continue to provide the high quality services to residents. The property portfolio has continued to generate reliable revenues, but it hasn't actually been actively managed, particularly since its inception in the 1970s and 80s, with a few exceptions. And so what this paper proposes is a radical overhaul of the way we approach our commercial property portfolio. And it's a culmination of a lot of good work by officers and our external consultants. We need to do this to modernise the portfolio, to rebalance it, to make sure that we can continue to generate sufficient revenues and grow our revenues rather than seeing them decline. We're also in here proposing earmarking up to £25 million from our cash deposits towards alternative investments such as green energy and new housing initiatives to help with our to provide additional housing for our residents. This paper also addresses the governance issues to enable us to move fleet of foot when it comes to making changes to the commercial property portfolio. I'm grateful to the support of all the other parties evidenced at the EPP meeting last week, and we acknowledge the comments that they made at that meeting. I think this is an important and necessary reform, and I recommend it to Cabinet.
Thank you, Councillor. Comments, anybody? To make it strikes me as being a very sensible and necessary step to protect our future viability as a council. If we don't do it, then we will just gradually see our our assets diminish over time, and therefore our ability to provide the services which our residents wish us to provide. So if you're all happy, we shall. This is yet again another recommendation to full council. So we shall see this again in due course. It's going to be a busy early June, I feel. But that is taken as approved. Therefore, let's move to item 12, climate change strategy. I shall again do my impersonation of Councillor Donnell, but not in a Northern Irish accent. We'll be very pleased because Karen would pick me up if I was to do that. He wishes me to say the following. Let me begin the introduction to this paper by thanking people who have contributed so much to this new strategy. First of all, particularly the officers, led by Mark Lambert and Andrew Hunter, who managed to do this work at the same time as creating the local plan for Councillor Raffel. But also volunteer groups have contributed significantly to the strategy as well, and I think their contribution needs to be acknowledged. This first proposed, the draft of this plan some months ago, and took advantage of a workshop of interested parties, and the workshop, working in partnership with local groups, showed that we needed to improve the original strategy and make significant developments on it. And rather going forward, we went back a bit, and nevertheless, in doing so, improved it significantly by taking into account the views of our local experts. And what you have before you now is the result, which sets a strategy for the next few years, a strategy that's environmentally friendly, it's realistic, it is challenging, but it's also sensible. And that's what this council should be doing. Some people have suggested that we should go further, and I think there's always a temptation to try and be more ambitious. But there's also a danger in being more ambitious that you become unrealistic. And we've sought to avoid that being the case in this instance. It's important to bring Cabinet's attention to a couple of things. Firstly, the improvements that the Council has made in its own operations underpinning this. We must first make sure we're doing the best that we can do as a council. And that's what is happening with our improvements in energy consumption, our pilots in PV energy generation, and our plans for the Green Infrastructure Fund, so that we are hopefully starting to set an example for the community as a whole. And we shall, I very much look forward to seeing the plans come forward for the use of that Green Infrastructure Fund in the coming months. Also want to draw Cabinet's attention to the alignment of our carbon targets to those of the government now. So this strategy provides the blueprint of how we ought to go forward. It's a sensible, pragmatic, but challenging plan, but it's one that we need to have, and one which Councillor Donnell would urge us to support. Comments, please. Somebody? Nobody? Is agreed? Then we put it through. Thank you. I think I've probably finished all my bits now, so the rest of this is the Councillor Isaac show, I think. So we move on now. We've done item 14, so we move to item 16, an on-key decision on the land to the rear of Tadley Community Centre, New Church Road, Tadley. Councillor Isaac.
Thank you, Leader. This is a proposal to enable the building of a youth centre, youth facility, as an annex to the Tadley Community Centre, and it requires us to acquire at a peppercorn a small piece of land from Hampshire County Council, so that we can lease this to the Tadley Community Association. It seems to me to be a very worthwhile initiative, and I commend Tadley Community Association for its work in driving this forward, and also to the residents of Tadley for supporting it, particularly in terms of taking on a £250,000 proposed public works loan. And also, I note that £50,000 is to come from Tadley Town Council reserves, as well as £250,000 from the Turbury Allotment Charity. There's an application that's gone in to our local infrastructure fund for just over £200,000. The deputy leader might like to make a comment on that, but obviously I hope that it succeeds and enables this development to take place. I'd also like to recognise the efforts of councillors Leeks and Musson, and the ex-county council and current borough councillor, Councillor Marilyn Tucker, in leading on this and assisting in getting us to this point.
Thank you very much. It's I think it's really good to see a community like Tadley taking the lead and driving its own facilities forward, and being prepared to go out and borrow the necessary money and to invest its own resources in it. It's an perfect example of what one would hope that a local town or parish council, if it has the facility to do these things and can financially create a structure to enable it to do so, should be doing. And I think they deserve tremendous commendation for actually being able to do it. Councillor John Warden, I don't know if you wish to comment on the LIF contribution, but it's money which presumably will come through in due course.
The LIF application is certainly worthy of further consideration and is undergoing that consideration at this moment in time.
Good. In which case, I think we can approve this, can we not? And then item 17, again, Councillor Isaac, the Black Dam roundabout improvements, or rather, transfer of land to enable the Black Dam roundabout improvements.
Thank you, Leader. Yes. This paper is about releasing some council-owned land to Hampshire County Council to enable the construction of the improvements to the Black Dam roundabout, and clearly that infrastructure improvement is going to be particularly important and valuable to the town in the years ahead, and so I have no difficulty whatsoever in recommending that the release of this land, which generally serves no other particular valuable purpose, to enable this work to proceed.
Agreed. Agreed. Good. Finally, then, item 18, which is matters dealt with by portfolio holders under delegated powers, which of which there's quite an extensive list, actually. These are normally for noting, but there are two or three which I would actually quite like to draw attention to. One is the fact that we are granting some additional monies to the Basingstoke CAB for additional funding to help them deal with an increased workload, which I think is money well spent. They are providing a tremendously good service, and it's important that we continue to provide them with a facility for doing that. The second particular one, which I would like to draw attention to, and you might, Councillor John, wouldn't wish to comment on it, if only to help draw awareness of the fact that it's there, which is the top of the town shop front improvement scheme. I don't know if you wish to say a word on that.
Of course, very happy to, Leader. The Top of the Town programme is ongoing. We have set as an administration that the top of the town is a priority. We want to ensure that it looks and feels better, to encourage more people to want to shop and enjoy themselves in Basingstoke and in that part of Basingstoke. So to that end, we are introducing a scheme that will ensure that there is matched funding available for traders and indeed for building owners who wish to invest in their buildings, to bring them up to a better quality of finish, and ensuring that ultimately the whole of the top of the town benefits by creating a more pleasant place for people to be.
Good, thank you. Last but one, again I just draw attention to it because I think it deserves to a degree of airing, which is the Flood Business Support Scheme, which is a hardship fund which we are putting in place to help those businesses who may have been affected by the flooding in any of the key areas that we have had flooding during the course of the last few months, to provide financial assistance for them to be essentially recompense for the loss of business trade that they suffered, but actually it's really to help them get back on their feet again and get trading effectively, and therefore I think something which I hope we will be able to provide quickly and effectively going forward. And then finally, just this point here on the residence survey, which is the one that comes up under my portfolio, and this is really putting in some flesh onto the bones of the concept which I raised during my budget speech, which was of the need, along with making all the other steps that we were taking in the budget, to look at reducing the cost of politics in the borough, and to look at moving from 3 elections in thirds to moving to 4 yearly elections, and to also look at potentially reducing the number of councillors in the borough. And I said at the time that we would start by testing the water with our residents to see how well those ideas played with them before we would choose to take it further forward. This is the first stage in doing this. We carry out an annual resident survey. It's exactly the right place to be asking those questions. There are already questions within that survey on the relationship the residents have with the council and how well they feel that they are being represented or in contact with their elected representatives. So this just fleshes that out in a bit more detail, and I hope we will get from this survey a very clear steer on how our residents feel about how often and how many councillors they wish to elect. So, if those are all for noted, then we may draw this meeting to a conclusion at about 7:02, I think it is.